I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby, here with Top Gun Maverick DP Claudio Miranda. Claudio, some of the technical innovations employed in this project that ultimately put us, the audience, in the cockpit were so breathtaking, and I'm sure you've heard it over and over again, but I am desperate to know more. How did you capture all of those spectacular aerial shots and all that footage?
A lot of prep, a lot of getting in early, a lot of examining the planes and what we can do with them. I got my pilot's license on during the whole process of things to learn more about planes. So just educating myself on planes and educating myself on, working with the Navy, knowing we had to get there early to get approvals, to get all the positions we wanted. I had a slew of positions. I got most of them. I didn't get all of them, but there was a couple ones that I wanted that, obviously they said they would affect the plane's performance, so I couldn't do that. So I did pretty good. I got a lot of I got a lot of structure outside the plane, and I got 6 inside the plane. So between the 3 or 4 positions outside, we did really well.
So, but I mean, how on earth did you physically rig all those cameras in various parts of each plane? Like, how many cameras are you working with, throughout the whole shoot?
One day we had a lot. One day we had above 26. Just because in a way, like each plane, there was 2 planes. Each plane had 6 cameras. Right. For the internal one. So there's 12 there. And then there was additional exterior mount cameras that could have anywhere between 3 and 4 cameras on that to get rear views, front views, wing. There was actually one that could go on where they put fuel tanks or other accessories,
Yeah.
And it could either go on left or right. So you could have a 4, and then we had this dorsal fin, which was another one that was on the top that took a long while to engineer and make. So that was that was actually the hardest one. It was one that was just right behind the canopy that looked back.
Yeah.
But we couldn't really run those at the same time when we were doing acting performances, because if you put something on the wing, the electronics tell the plane that it can't perform any more G's. So it starts you can only pull 3.5 G's when you have something on the wing.
Right.
And Tom and everyone wanted full performance.
Of course.
So those were always a separate run that we did for those runs. So we did and when the interior cameras, we were allowed to go 7.5 G's on the interior cameras. So obviously they had to be rated for more. And we had size constraints because there's also ejection path that had to be clear with even a 1/4 inch or 1/8 inch. It couldn't protrude beyond that. So we had to shave lenses. We had to print 3D versions of a lens hood. So this was all kind of and then this is also kind of where the Rialto is, where we could kind of remote the sensor away from the camera. That kind of came out. It was actually, I needed to do something else to put it on. It was weird because that sensor the remote sensor it was something else that we were trying to go for, which was put it in the L39, which is, look, for some reason I got a model. They gave me one. It looks like that.
Wow.
So that's the L39. So in this camera house, I wanted to put a different lens on here. So originally they were going to put the body, and then they're going to do the remote sensor in here. So that's kind of what was good. That's kind of what the reason why the Rialto was built. But then we go like, wow, this is awesome. We could stick this anywhere, and so that kind of fueled that need. So we had really early beta versions of that, it wasn't even the full cable. And when the canopy had to be disengaged, we had such fragile versions of it that the cables would just tear and rip. Right now, the new Rialtos are built much hardier, so it would probably not be approved as much as the flimsy ones we had, the prototypes,
So, like, you and the team are innovating on this film. I mean, is that, am I right to say the innovations that you came up with can now be used in other productions going forward. So this is a pretty like a
Well,
milestone
everyone
achievement.
really loves the Rialto, the byproduct,
Yeah.
of what this is, and I did go to Japan, and a long time ago before Top Gun, and I wanted to design a camera that had all the internal NDs, which was also super helpful in the plane because I didn't even have room to stick on an ND, and some of the lenses were so wide you couldn't even put a neutral density on it. So, and then the weather was changing, so when we had to change 6 cameras, in a couple seconds, and you had to, plan it. It was easy to kind of, okay, we'll pull all the NDs, and it was very fast. And what was kind of interesting about the planes, we had the camera company Keslow made a button that would actually trigger all the 6 cameras. So we would set exposures. I would look at the mountains and where they were going and figure out the run they were going, how deep they were going, the angle of the runs. And then we would lock an exposure, and then we would just hope for the best,
Hope for the
But
best.
actually, that was pretty good. I don't think I was ever off more than a third of a stop, in the whole
Wow.
thing. So, considering that, it kind of goes in and out. We didn't want it auto throttling with exposures or anything like that. So I really wanted to be consistent. I wanted to pick it, and we're just going to go for it, and I think that gives it more energy, like rather than something, if it goes dark, it brightens it up, or that kind of nonsense. So I liked it when Tom goes dark and bright, and there's energy to it, and he goes under a bridge, or he goes, whatever it is, it was like some kind of there's an effect that's on him that's pretty
Yeah.
you know
You've worked with Tom Cruise before. He's probably the biggest movie star in the world, and from what we all know about him, he's a real perfectionist. All creatives are perfectionists, but he really
right
is a stickler for detail.
right
What does he bring to the table that you most value about Tom and working with him?
Well, what I love at Tom is, like, sometimes you need support to get this, like your ideas. Like he's, we're all part of the same camp, Joe, and we're all kind of wanting the same thing. We all want to get this as real as possible. We all want to put, I talked to Tom about trying to get the Oblivion flying on a helicopter.
Yeah.
We didn't do that, but we tried. So he knew early on that I'm always on trying to get it in camera as much as possible. I didn't want to be in a volume. I didn't want to be on blue screen. I didn't want to be in any of those things, and I think you feel it. Like, if we did the aircraft launch on a volume or blue screen, or, the guy would do that, and it just you wouldn't feel the bam that he gets, that throws him when he gets off the carrier, or any of the stuff that throws him, or the G's, or the face getting distorted, or the people, like, pushing themselves personally, which you really see on the screen. And, I just don't, and Tom knew that, and he's a pilot. And so what's great about Tom is that he backed us all up. Like when the studio goes, oh, that's too much money, or, we need another aircraft, or, he would just, he just pushed it. And what Tom did too, he pushed the movie too, because we were supposed to release, a couple of years ago, 2020 was there's a trailer that says, release of 2020, and he held on to the trailer when people can go back in the audience. And that was him, that, he has that power to hold it, which was great, because I don't know. I mean, everyone in the COVID scare, no one would have been to the theater. So, I mean, it was perfect timing,
I know.
But sometimes it's funny to talk about a movie I did so long ago.
I know, because it was such a long time ago now, but
Yeah.
everyone I've spoken to about Top Gun Maverick reminds me that it was the film we needed post-pandemic. It got people back to cinema. My parents in their 70s never, ever go to the cinema, and they went with their popcorn and watched this movie, and still talk about it. So that's the beauty of the film. But I wonder as well, way back when you got this job, and you knew that it was going to be a massive undertaking of in-camera and practical effects and pushing yourself. Did you ever have any self-doubt? How did you know that you were ready to take on such a huge undertaking?
Well, never really externally, but sometimes internally you have like little doubts, because in truth is, they said you'll never get 6 cameras on the plane. The Navy did, the commanders, and and I went, I go, like, I'm just going to keep on pushing, and then I was able to stand by the plane and go, what's that for? And they said, that's a video camera. I said, well, you don't really need it. Can we just start losing gear out of the plane? And I found this old version of the F-18 that didn't have some tech gear in the back seat, where they usually have like another instrument that goes on top. So I found this flat, it's called the glare shield, that I was able to that's where I was able to put the camera. There was one version of the F-18 that didn't have all this this tech,
Yeah.
So that was kind of really helpful. And they just let me go around there to say, hey, what's that for? And they start ripping it out, and we start finding proof. In the movie, there's a camera in the shot. It's right next to the right. There's a battery, and there's a battery, and there's a camera right here. It just, you just think it's electronic gear. In fact, there was like a video recorder there. We just kind of I took that out. I tell you, what's that? And that was a video recorder, and I replaced it with, a Venice body there too. So
that's amazing. So much expectation, pressure on the film to live up to this gospel-like reverence to Top Gun, and
right.
It's become an enormous hit, huge. And not only that, it's been so acclaimed by critics. It's winning awards. It's in the Oscar conversation.
I know, it's kind of crazy, right?
Amazing. How does that make you feel? How proud of you the way this film has come out?
It's funny because I don't know. I just didn't think it was, I don't know. I did Top Gun, and then, it's not really a sequel. It's a new version of it. We don't want to call it a sequel. It's like a new version of it. It's not Top Gun 2. It's Top Gun Maverick. But I just kind of thought like that kind of movie, doesn't really get recognition, initially. And no matter how good it is, I just thought I just didn't imagine it at the time, and then it just gets exciting. I see someone came up to me, said I saw it 35 times, like
what?
I go like 35 times. I mean,
wow.
Wow. And I see a lot of people that have seen it multiple times. Most people I talk to have seen it at least twice, or, a lot of people have seen it 5 times. Some people just see it for the movie, then they want to see the aerial, and they want to figure it out, and then they see it for like 3 times. So it seems like a lot of people have, done a review. And now there's like a new release of it again. Like there's a Christmas, they're putting it back in theaters. There's another release going on again, and then I think there's a streaming at the same time too. So because
people love it, and
people love it. There's people like talking like, what are they watching on the Academy? Says, I just want to see Top Gun again. It's like, okay.
we just want to feel something. We want to feel good, and like that movie. When I walked out of that movie, I felt like I was on cloud 9. I just felt so like satisfied and happy, and we really needed this movie. I'm glad that it held off and it came out when it did. I really am. You know what? Also, I don't want to lose sight of all the other work you did in this film, because people, of course, want to talk about the technical marvel that you created. But there's some gorgeous shots of sunsets and the planes going through the sky in a long shot, and the more intimate scenes between the men who are reckoning with their past and their mission. Very emotionally resonant work that you did. It reminded me of some of the previous work you've done in, for example, Life of Pi. When we're grounded and not flying through the sky. Can you talk me through maybe your highlight scene where you really had to focus on the emotion as opposed to the innovation?
There's different scenes. There's a scene where Tom and Jennifer Connelly get together, Penny Benjamin. I always think that's an emotional thing, and try to play with light. And there's a little moment that we kind of played with a little, just some background out of focus lights, did a little bit dolly around just to try to get, give you some magical moment between them two where they finally kick in. I think there's moments like that I think I'm pretty proud of, that the way that looks. I think there's a scene that I love that's between Miles and Tom, when he's saying, why you pulled my papers, that one.
Yeah, I love that.
It's like nighttime, and they're kind of against, and it's actually, that's really down in San Diego. That's the Air Force Base there. So that's not a translate, that's all real. And that was, again, pushing the ASA to try to get as much of that as possible, and exposing down and shooting as wide open as I can to get all that real light in there. So that's a real set.
Stunning.
So there's a lot of work I'm really proud of. That's maybe not just all the flying. just, there's things that just look great. Tom on a motorcycle is always kind of like,
So good.
there's him going through the desert, I think looks great.
Yeah.
There's some scenes that didn't make it in where he actually pulled up to the Academy. But then there's obviously the hero shot that we know with him running and chasing the plane. And we did that a bunch of times,
Oh, really?
because we really wanted the right weather. We did it a couple days, it was overcast, and we just, that shot can't be overcast, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I timed it so the light would be in the right place. We had everything runs, everything's in the right place, and I'm actually operating that shot, and we see the plane, perfectly go,
So good.
right through the sun, and then so I had some ground crew that was there on I think it was a 1,000 mil lens, also getting it across like a long halated distortion view. I mean, I like all that kind of mess too. Even people like trying to operate catching jets and fumbling around, and it's messy, which is kind of definitely better than like CG can be perfect operating, which is kind of boring, but you can get it like people are trying to like the best they can, like
So organic.
They're putting physical sites on. They built the people, the mountain crew put they made like their own sites so they could target the planes as well. So there's a lot of people like working really hard. And I did talk to the original cinematographer, Jeffrey Kimball, on this as well. And I got some ideas. Yeah, I used to be a gaffer for Tony Scott back in the day.
Yes.
So there was a little bit of, kind of sentiment for me, doing this movie.
Yeah, honoring Tony Scott's tremendous legacy.
Right.
I love.
So we did put a couple like orange grads, and we didn't.
Yeah.
And the beach scene's very warm, and and it has that kind of glisten and backlight and low light, and we were very conscious about shooting the interior scenes, and then we go like the bar scene, and then we go out because the beach was right there, then we go shoot the beach in the low light. So all these were kind of, we just were, Tom was also great, instrumental in us pushing and getting everything we want. We always want to shoot in the best light. Top Gun mostly has sunsets. You know what I mean? That we're shooting. So we go out and do the sunsets, and then we come inside and do. There's also a very kind of interesting thing that I worked out, that I had an idea. When the Dark Star takes off in the evening, I thought it'd be really. I just had a thought. I thought, wouldn't it be great if it takes off in the evening and it climbs up and then recatches the sun? I just thought that would be really cool. You know what I mean? Like it's evening when he takes off, he goes up, and then he kind of goes up, and then you see him going up, and he goes, talk to me, he goes, and he finally gets high enough, and the sun kind of re-kicks him on that moment. So I thought that kind of worked out great. That idea,
Funny. I love how you started as a gaffer, and you've gone on to win the Academy Award. I remember your acceptance speech, because you were like, I love it when winners are so gobsmacked that they can speak.
I didn't even know what I was saying. I just went to like I just lost everything. I'm a much better speaker now than I was then. Now I can talk, but then I couldn't talk. Then it was like, and my daughter's really mad at me too, because I didn't thank her. So one of them I thanked, and one of them I didn't thank, which is like still kind of like a thing.
They can hold it over you, but
they can hold it over.
I love
so
it.
Maybe if I win something, maybe I only thank her or something. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe you should do that.
How to get even.
It's such a great moment, because you could just see, like, you thanked obviously Ang Lee, and I just thought I love those moments. So thank you for that. But finally, look, before I let you go, it's great to see you working with Joseph Kosinski again. He's someone that you've worked with on pretty much all of his films. I want him to get as much credit for this film as all the other people who brought it to life, because he's such a great filmer. Like, very briefly, what's the best thing about Joseph's talent, and why do you want to keep going back to him?
I just love that we always try to figure something different. Like, I think every movie we've done is a leap in a different direction. Like, Tron is different than Oblivion in the way we shot it. First it was 3D, the big camera, and then we did Only the Brave, because let's just do a smaller movie, and then And then we did a small movie, then we do Top Gun, which is like different. And I just feel like every movie that I've done, even Spiderhead, they're all just, I almost think that maybe which I think is great, that you can't just say, maybe you can. I mean, some people say they can, but that's Claudio or that's Joe, because we always try to be different, and we always try to do it with a tactile environment. When we did Only the Brave, we had fire. When we did Oblivion, we made this massive projection screen. When we did Tron, we made sure we had sets where we have lighting that interacts with people and suits that were really lit up and lit people. So we're always really, trying to great effort to try to get all this, this environment, and I feel like the audience, and it's easier for me to light and bounce lights rather than just, it's really sad if you're just on a blue or green world and nothing's there, and you gotta, here's the monster, and that seems super sad, and super uninspiring when you're there as a cinematographer, like, what do you do? Like, oh, I'll put a backlight.
Yay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yay. Like, what am I framing against? Someone's gonna, probably they're gonna frame it after the fact. And that whole style is something that Joe and I just don't really want to do, those kind of movies. We don't, and that's what I love about Joe. Like, even Formula One, this is our next movie. He's working really hard, and and I'm calling different camera manufacturers, and I got 3 of them I'm working with right now, and trying to figure out, trying to get small cameras that are good quality, and see what what's coming out next. To try to see if I can get those on cars and little remote heads, and and just trying to get new viewpoints that we haven't seen before. So though Joe is we're both like challenging each other, like, what can we do? What's going to be different? So
I can't wait. I can't wait for more. Thank you so much, Claudio, for your time today, and congratulations on some amazing work in Top Gun Maverick.
Oh yeah, thanks.